Israeli forces have stormed the Kamal Adwan hospital in northern Gaza, forcing 350 people out, including all the patients and medical staff. South Korea's opposition-controlled National Assembly voted to oust interim leader Han Duck-Soo. And the Argentinian government, led by Javier Milei, set the lowest minimum wage in the past 20 years. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos, and from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. We begin today's information with Palestine as Israeli forces stormed the Kamal Adwan hospital in northern Gaza, forcing 350 people out, including all the patients and medical staff. Authorities are reporting that around 50 people have been killed in this process, including 5 medical staff, as a result of an Israeli airstrike on a building near the hospital. Israel has ordered the evacuation of the hospital, endangering not only the staff, but the nearly 75 patients who remained hospitalized. In these last weeks, the attacks against the health facility, the most important in the area, have been constant, and the Gaza authorities denounced an ethnic cleansing operation in the north of the Palestinian enclave. And in Israel, at least 18 people were injured as they ran to take shelter from several Yemeni missiles early Friday morning. The Zionist Defense Forces claim to have intercepted the missile at around 3 a.m. local time. Hours later, the Magen David Adom service in charge of medical emergencies in Israel confirmed the number of people wounded. As a consequence, the Ben Gurion airport, the most important one in the country, temporarily suspended its operations. The strike comes hours after Israel bombed Yemen in an attack that nearly killed the president of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, who was on a mission in the country. And we now move on to other topics. Military expert Andrei Makrochko reported on Friday that Russian troops crossed over the Volkhya River to prepare a new offensive in northeastern Kharkov in Ukraine. Makrochko specified that the advance generated a positive trend as they are making progress within the city downtown. The incursion attached great importance for future military operations as they managed to take over almost half of the village. The expert further noted that Ukraine sent its military forces to stop the advance. However, the Russian military successfully held their positions and destroyed several enemy strongholds. And on Friday, South Korea's opposition-controlled National Assembly voted to oust acting President Han Duck-Soo. The Democratic Party initiated the motion just 2 weeks after the Prime Minister assumed the role following the impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol, who is facing rebellion charges related to a controversial martial law declaration. Opposition lawmakers accused Han of failing to appoint judges to the Constitutional Court. That is a critical step for addressing Yoon's impeachment process, and claimed he had acted in support of Yoon during the political crisis.
I announced that Prime Minister Han Duck-Soo's impeachment motion has passed. Out of the 192 lawmakers who voted, 192 voted to impeach.
And in Spain, the autonomous community of Madrid is experiencing a wave of mobilizations where rectors, professors and students from public universities denounce an unsustainable situation due to the lack of funding resulting from the budgetary management of Community President Isabel Ayuso. Let's see.
The Community of Madrid has 6 public universities that serve tens of thousands of students. However, the regional budgets for 2025 propose an increase of only 47.3 million euros, far from the 200 million that the rectors consider necessary to reverse the underfunding accumulated over the last 15 years.
Isabel Ayuso is at war with the public university. She's suffocating us at the budget level, with an underfunding of more than 35 in the last 15 years.
The protests have reached the gates of the Assembly of Madrid on the day a USO used his absolute majority to approve the accounts for 2025. The protesters denounced the use of public universities as a weapon against the government.
Worse, they now have in their hands a lot of universities that is an open war with the central government in which the Public University of Madrid is going to pay for their program. We cannot accept it.
In Madrid, there are already 13 private universities compared to the 6 public ones. And the precariousness, denounced by the central government, affects all staff.
As you know, we have a problem in the public universities of our country of temporary and precarious contracts. In the university, it is practically 50%. 1 out of every 2 professors in the public universities of our country has a precarious and temporary contract.
Students also raise their voices. A new law promoted by the Community of Madrid threatens to limit the organizational capacity of the student movement. Just after the students led camps in solidarity with Palestine and questioned the links of universities with companies that support the Zionist state of Israel.
The law is a serious repression of the student movement. It is no coincidence that this law was passed just after the Palestinian protests. They clearly want to repress the student movement that has been demonstrating in defense of Palestine and against the relations of our universities with companies that finance the genocide that Israel commits.
Meanwhile, the universities face a bleak outlook. The 6 rectors have issued a joint statement denouncing that the regional budget does not guarantee the sustainability of public universities after more than a decade of neglect. A USO, aware of the importance of the cultural battle, attacks those who defend public education.
With the case of the Complutants, they are so interested in the public university, in public education, and they are doing the same as with feminism, as with all institutions, colonizing it to use it in their service.
With a budget crisis threatening the future of public education at all levels, the Community of Madrid is experiencing a conflict between a growing privatization model and the defense of accessible education. Mobilizations of the entire educational community promise to mark the coming weeks.
And now we have a short break coming up, but first, remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Mozambique, steady clashes between inmates and security forces led to 21 deaths in the latest hours as a result of a wave of violence following elections. The National Police Chief, Bernardino Rafael, briefed that a confrontation between escaped convicts and security forces brought about the death toll of 33 inmates out of the 6,000 fugitives from the Maputo prison, while other 15 were injured. In this regard, both the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki Mahamat, and the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, expressed their concern for the escalation of violence in this country. And we go now to Panama as the canal of the country celebrates 25 years in the hands of the nation, but it continues to be overshadowed in a country that is the 4th most unequal in the world and that now faces the imperialist threat of the United States to conquer it again. Our colleague Reka Chaminagrandi with the details.
When the Panamanians recovered the canal in 2000, the waterway ceased to be a U.S. military asset and became an enterprise at the service of world trade, connecting 1,920 ports, 180 maritime routes, and serving 170 countries. And although the canal generates billions of dollars a year, these benefits seem imperceptible to the majority of the population.
But history did not end up making the most collective use possible of the assets that were reverted. It turns out that here, after the invasion, once the military regime was suppressed, The democracy of those at the top organized things in such a way that those reverted goods passed into the hands of the oligarchy, and $30 billion went to the great robbery of that century.
El hito llega con un sabor agridulce.
The milestone comes with a bittersweet taste. U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's onslaught on recovering the canal, citing alleged Chinese control and high tariffs, has brought to the fore debates on the background and remaining forms of interventionism after the reversion.
The canal is problematically involved with a treaty called the Canal Neutrality Treaty, which is not legal, is not in accordance with international law, and is not convenient for Panama. On top of that, it turns out that the reverted areas are in the hands of the new North Americans, in quotation marks, the new white people, and not in the hands of the Panamanian people.
But we have to disassociate ourselves from that treaty, and that should be the government's position to start talking about it. We cannot accept that every time they threaten us because we are a small nation.
After the signing of the Torrijos-Carter treaties in 1977, the U.S. Congress unilaterally introduced at least 6 amendments before ratifying it in 1979, the Concini Amendment and the church and number reservations being the most controversial and interventionist in tenor.
We continue to be seen by the United States as their position to take care of their backyard in South America, and that is what Donald Trump is referring to, in the face of the possibility of a global conflict, to put us as a military objective of their enemies.
The Mulino government has been cautious in its responses to Trump, whose statements come as a bucket of cold water in the face of the accommodating attitude that has characterized all post-invasion Panamanian governments. Trump replaced current Ambassador Mari Carmen Aponte with Kevin Marino Cabrera, a Miami-Dade County Commissioner in Florida, an active Republican member and businessman, which signals a 180-degree turn in relations between the two countries, with control of the canal now the central focus.
Para teleSUR, desde Ciudad de Panamá, Reca Chandiramani.
Also in this context, and following the U.S. President-elect's claims that China had illegal influence over the Panama Canal, the Asian nation's foreign ministry stressed it respects the Latin American country's sovereignty over the waterway.
I also noticed that Panama's President Mulino pointed out that the Panama Canal is not directly or indirectly controlled by any major power. From China's side, we will continue to respect Panama's sovereignty over the canal and recognize the canal as a permanently neutral international waterway.
And we go now to the United States, as weeks after President-elect Donald Trump signaled Tom Homan to be in charge of managing immigration policies, the former police officer has announced he will detain foreign families starting on January 20, 2025. Baptized by the GOP as the border czar, Homan assured Thursday on an interview to a U.S. outlet that he is planning to detain adults with their minors. The politician added that authorities won't mind if children are born in the United States. They will be detained regardless and later deported. Moreover, the immigration official detailed that parents will have to relinquish custody of their children to leave them in the United States. Otherwise, their minors will be deported with them. And in Haiti, the Presidential Transitional Council dismissed the Minister of Public Health and Population, Dukenson Lorteb Lema, following the attack perpetrated last Tuesday by the criminal group Living Together against the State University Hospital. Government officials who gave this information did so on the condition of anonymity due to the tense situation of violence. They indicated that the Minister of Justice, Patrick Pellissier, will take over as the new Minister of Health on a provisional basis. This attack on the hospital was one of the worst ever recorded, killing 2 journalists and a police officer when members of the coalition of criminal groups came in shooting at those on the premises. Meanwhile, in Ecuador, more families denounce forced disappearances of their children and adolescents. The indignation caused by the forced disappearance of 3 teenagers and a child who were detained by a military patrol in Guayaquil has prompted the emergence of more reports of similar cases. Just as has happened with Stephen, Saul, Ismael, and Josue, 2 mothers, Sandra Arteaga and Janet Escobar, have denounced a similar case. Their children have been missing since December 6th, 2 days before the ones that went missing in Guayaquil.
We are the mothers of the boys, 3 missing. I ask you to help me to share this because they are children, 3 minors, 2 sons, and my son-in-law.
Esto pasó en Lorenzo de Garaycoa, en la Hacienda Fortaleza.
This happened in Orense de Garaycoa, in the Hacienda Fortaleza. The military came in to do raids and took 6 children. Of those 6 children, my 2 children and my son-in-law are included. Since those days, we have no communication. We don't know where they are. Nothing. No trace of them.
Now we have a second show break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English. There you will be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings, and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The Public Prosecutor's Office of Venezuela has issued a statement informing the arrest of the Argentinian gendarme linked to terrorist actions in the Bolivarian nation. The communique states that Mr. Nahuel Agustin Gallo has been arrested for having attempted to enter the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela irregularly, hiding his real criminal plan under the guise of a sentimental visit. The communique states also that the citizen is under investigation for his connection to a group of people who tried to carry out a series of destabilizing and terrorist actions from our territory with the support of international ultra-right-wing groups. The accused is at the disposal of the judge based on the provisions of the Venezuelan Constitution and national laws. Furthermore, the official communication stressed that the statements and actions made by the Argentine government using the relatives of the accused, as well as the judicial resolution taken by the Federal Chamber of Mendoza, make clear the complicity of the authorities of this nation in the subversive plans that seek to attack by any means the Venezuelan state and its legitimate institutions. In closing remarks, the statement also added that the prosecutor's office, as well as all the public powers, stand firm in the supreme duty to preserve and defend peace, sovereignty, and the principle of self-determination of the peoples as fundamental pillars on which the Republic of Venezuela is built. And the Argentinian government, led by Javier Milei, set the lowest minimum wage in the past 20 years. The resolution stipulates a pay raise for minimum wages of 9.3% to be paid every month from December to March, and this salary increase covers up to only 16.9% of this basic food basket. In this regard, the spokesperson of Milei's executive stated that this raise is planned to be revoked in the near future. In this context, experts from the Study and Training Institute of Buenos Aires deemed that the resolution imposed what constitutes as the lowest minimum salary recorded in the last 2 decades. The Peruvian Congress is investigating former official Jorge Torres Arabia, suspected of running an alleged prostitution ring within the legislature. Torres, who previously headed the Legal and Constitutional Office and is linked to the right-wing Alianza para el Progreso party, is accused of exploiting young women to provide sexual services to lawmakers in exchange for political favors. The investigation intensified following the murder of Andrea Vidal, a former employee who was reportedly involved in recruiting women for the operation. As public outrage grows over this scandal, Torres has denied any wrongdoing, asserting that hiring practices were managed by human resources. And in Bolivia, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal announced the closing of the judicial election with the delivery of credentials to those elected in order to immediately open the general electoral process to elect the government and the Legislative Assembly in the middle of next year. Our correspondent, Freddy Morales, with the details.
The election of the highest judicial authorities by citizen vote is a unique process in the continent, but Mexico is in the process of implementing it.
This is a very sui generis type of election that does not exist in Latin America. Soon the state of Mexico will address them, but it is a situation that needs to be studied.
In Bolivia, the election was held on December 15th in its third version with the common problem of scarce information on the 94 candidates. But in comparison to the two previous ones, this time the valid votes exceeded the invalid and blank votes.
In the previous election, the white and null vote reached 65% in round figures and the useful vote reached 35%. In this election, I stress, in this election, the result is totally different. The valid votes reached 64.29% and the white and null votes barely reached 35%.
Out of a total of 26 judicial authorities that were to be elected in these elections, only 19 were elected by decision of the Constitutional Court, and the remaining 7 will have to wait for the pre-selection of candidates by the Legislative Assembly. With the partial election, this process is closed.
The delivery of credentials is scheduled for December 30th of this year, thus closing the judicial electoral process.
The new judicial authorities will take office next January 2nd, and the Supreme Electoral Court will start preparing for the general elections of the national government and Legislative Assembly, which are scheduled for August 2025.
As from January, the Supreme Electoral Tribunal must dedicate all its efforts to the general election, which is programmed in principle for August 10, 2025. This will be ratified at the time of the launching of the call, which is scheduled to take place in the first 10 days of April.
While the authorities of the judiciary are elected for 6 years, the president, vice president, deputies, and senators are elected for 5 years. In 2026, this country will also have elections again and will be to elect governors and mayors, also for a period of 5 years.
Freddy Morales, teleSUR, Bolivia.
Also in Bolivia, authorities issued an orange alert for the flooding of the Acre River in the Amazonian city of Cobija in the north of the country. Authorities argued that the alert intended to warn the population and minimize the risks of a possible overflow. Since the beginning of 2024, the north of Bolivia has been suffering the worst floods in the last 10 years due to overwhelming overflow of the Acre River, whose waters rose from 1.5 to 17 meters in a week, an upsurge attributed to the deforestation of the Amazon and the illegal gold mining operations that are being carried out along its waters. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and also on TikTok. For teleSUR English, my name is Beren de los Santos. Thank you for watching.